Alright, so on the menu today, NCloth and Mesh Dynamics. How do we make them work together? Well, in this tutorial we're going to look at that specific workflow. I'm actually going to show you guys how we can make it iterative, so the mesh network is connected live to the NCloth and dynamic system. So what are we going to need? What ingredients? So firstly, we need an animated character, which we have. You're going to need a mesh that we're going to put the NCloth on, and maybe later also use as the mesh dynamics driver for the different links to make the chainmail, and finally some ornamentation for the helmet. Yeah, so that's about it. There's several ways of going about the same thing that I'm doing. This one is just to create an iterative workflow. So without further ado, let's just jump into this and learn how we approach the entire thing. Okay, so let's get started. The approach I'm going to take is first we're going to create our end dynamic simulation, and then once we have the simulation, we basically going to run the mesh network on top of that. So let's get started. First thing we're going to need is a mesh that is going to be simulated. Now let me talk about this really quickly. It's very important that this mesh will have a fair amount of detail to begin with. Not too much, otherwise your sims will be very slow, but it's dense enough that you're going to get a nice folds and so on. Later on, I'm actually going to use the same mesh to drive the mesh network. We can do it in two ways. We can all up the res of the NCloth itself and then have the links kind of be driven by that mesh, or we can create a duplicate mesh that's going to be wrap deformed, and it's already higher dense mesh to it. I hope that makes sense, what I just said. Anyway, furthermore, another thing that we should actually look at is that the mesh is ready to go before we do anything to it. So what do I mean is that if I open my UV editing, you can see that I already have my layout done here, my UV layout done. And the reason it's important, because if the minute we put our end dynamics on top of this, we cannot touch the UVs, because it will be a dynamic UV and will move, kind of the cloth is going to move through those UVs, and we don't want that. It will be more like a projection than actual baked in UVs. And I'm going to just fix a few things here so I have a much better just go to component, much better distribution on either side. It's just a little bit of fixing here and there, nothing really big. I try to keep everything more or less distance equally. In this case, I'm also going to up-res it once, like smooth, like that, just because I know the size of my links, and the smaller the distance here, the better the links will sit together. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with this, and next thing I'm going to do is apply NCloth. So how do we do it? Well, firstly, what I'm going to do is go into my effects menu set and go to my effects shelf. I'm going to choose my mesh that's going to be the NCloth mesh, and if you can see here in my outliner, I got my chainmail mesh here, and we are going to go to NCloth and create an NCloth system. So now if I press play, that should just fall and sync, and you can see it's behaving like cloth. All right. Now, before I start changing my cloth behavior, I'm going to change my nucleus behavior. So I'm going to just grab my nucleus here, and what the nucleus does is basically it makes our scene into like an environment that has nuclear behavior. What does that mean? It's got gravity, it's got different forces that are being calculated in the background. That means things can collide and react and behave just like in the real world. But I need to do a few little changes in the nucleus settings because the way the nucleus is set up and the way that Maya is set up. So Maya units are set up in centimeters. The nuclear default is set to meters. We need to change that up a bit. I also change a few other things, which if I ever make a tutorial on NCloth, I'll explain exactly what I'm doing. But by default, I always put 12 and 16 up here. It's just a multiplication of the numbers underneath, like the default numbers. In the time, in the scale attribute here, in the space scale, because I know the size of my model, I'm just going to put it 0.1. If it's real world, it will be 0.01, like that. And you'll see that things will behave a lot differently. You see how fast that's falling now? That's because now I have real world scale on it. That means the gravity is going to be pulling exactly at 9.8 strength of gravity, which is Earth's gravitational pull. So that's basically what I've set up here. I'm going to leave it at 0.1 just because this is going to behave closer to what I want it to behave, and it's going to be a little slower, and so on. Alrighty, next step. Well, I need the cloth to collide with certain objects, in this case the head. So I need to create a collider object. I'm going to go up to NCloth, and I'm going to go here to passive collider and press play, and you can see now it's sliding on that object very nicely, and it's being held. Cool. And the next thing I need to do is fasten my NCloth to the helmet, which is very easy to do. I'm going to press Shift I or Control 1 to go into my selection mode. I'm going to go to Edge Selection, and I'm just going to select all the way around like that. Hold down Control, right click, go change this to vertices. I'm going to unhide everything. I'm going to hold down Shift and select the helmet. Go to Constraints and go to Point on Surface and press play. And now you'll see that my chainmail is fastened to that helmet. So now you can see it's just settling nicely. And then the head is going to move like so. And as you can see, it's behaving like something that's not behaving correctly. It doesn't behave like chainmail. I got to make that happen. Should have. Alright, so now I'm going to choose my NCloth. I'm going to go into my NCloth settings over here. I'm not going to go into how this all works. I do have a preset for my chainmail, like so, just to save time because the tutorial is about mesh, not NCloth. So let's just stick to that. And I want to stay under the 10-minute. There we go. And now I have my chainmail. Alright, so with this, I'm going to stop with NCloth, and when we get back, we'll look at how we take this NCloth mesh and apply mesh dynamics to it. Okay, so we created our NCloth, and it's really cool. It's moving very nicely. I've cached it out, and I'm getting the behavior I expect. Now I need to take this mesh and make sure that I can run my my mesh network on top of it. Now, if you want to see like a more complex mesh network, you'll be able to see that in a previous tutorial where I kind of cover it pretty quickly. But for now, let me just grab all of this nucleus stuff and group it and NCloth. There we go. Alright, so I basically want the mesh network to run on top of this, and to do that I need to tell Maya where these vertices are. And if I just try run it on the NCloth, because that data is being driven by the NCloth node, it's not going to actually drive the different links. So what we need to do is make the NCloth mesh into a repo mesh prior to adding in our links. So let me show you that. So firstly, we're going to go into our animation menu set. We can go over here, or actually we're mesh network over there. And I'm going to go to my mesh network, and I'm going to go into my create mesh network box, like so. And I'm going to make sure that it's set to mesh, and locations, that's fine. Network name, let's call this underscore NCloth. Alright, and then just go apply. Alright, so it's now hidden in the original mesh that's being driven by the NCloth, but it's created a repo mesh that's going to be our NCloth mesh. So next step, I'm going to go to my repo, no, not to repo, we want to the distribution, to our distribution mesh. Let's just do that, there we go. A distribution mesh, and we just need one copy. And we're pretty much done with this. Alright, next thing I want to do is now create a mesh network for my links, so I can now create some chainmail. So you can see I got these links here made prior to my actual work. I'm going to make sure that this time they are set to instance, otherwise it's going to be too heavy once I have a whole lot of them in here. And I'm going to go apply. You're going to see I got, just one duplication there. You can see I got a repo mesh, but it's also called NCloth, so I'm just going to undo that. Undo once more. Alright, let's do that again, because I forgot to change the name. We'll call this chain mail. I think that's an E in there, not an A, but alright. Alright. Apply, there we go. We got proper naming. Alright, so if I go to my distribution mesh now, I only need one copy. One. There we go. I'm going to go to mesh. So now I got a mesh driving it. I'm going to drag the repo mesh. Alright, middle mouse click. Middle mouse click the repo mesh and drop it into the input mesh over here. So now you can see I got just that one over there. Now I can go to, let's say, center face, and then flood. So there we go, we got that all set. Now I'm pretty happy with the scale that I have here, but we can play with that by turning on the face edge settings, and that will kind of look at the distance between them and keep the shape. Like as they get smaller distance, we'll kind of fix it. The problem with that it makes it dynamic. So if you turn it off, they'll all be the same size throughout. So let's say if I think they're too big now, I can now just scale down the originals just a tad. Make sure that they're all still linked. Like so. And that will come into play a little later when we put some randomization on it. Alright, we can hide our repo mesh at this stage because we don't need to see it anymore. And here we go, we have a pretty awesome chainmail. Not perfect, but pretty cool. Let's just make these a little bigger so they're intersecting like so. Alright, next thing I want to do is add some, I have two versions of the links, so I want those to kind of play a part, which is pretty easy. I'm going to go to Mesh Network, Mesh Editor. That should open this guy over here. And we want the chainmail. I'm going to press plus here and go look for ID. And it's set to linear. I think at this stage it's every other one, so it looks good. I think I still have a few issues here. I might just go back over here and turn this back on. I think it probably look better. Yes, it does. So we're gonna leave that as is. Cool. So that's all set. I'm pretty happy with this. I could go ahead and add more detailing, like let's say maybe let's add an offset node. Where's my offset node? And let's say my offset node, I can go, there's an option here for patterns, I think. Multi-tile, clamps, that's rotation points. Rotation, offsets. Alright, we can do a lot of stuff here. I just need to put, let's say, in the rotations, let's put on its Y, let's put about 15 degrees so they're all a little rotated a bit. And then I can play around with their little, just a tiny bit of randomization so they're not all the same, and so on. We could play with this a lot and get something cool. Alright, so now if I press play, you see that now I get a very nice simulation of those chainmails. Alright, let's just finish this up. When we come back, we'll be looking at just putting a little bit of ornamentation and a way to kind of hide the connection here, and see what else we can do with this. So I'll see you soon. Alright, now for some bonus. So the bonus content we are actually going to have here is how do we actually use Mesh Network to add a little more flair to our lovely little helmet here. So what I can do is maybe add some detailing to the helmet over here along the sides, and some rivets on the top and sides, just so it looks like it's been riveted. And there's a lot of play here that we can do. Alright, so let's start off with that. We're going to start off with just the lining of the helmet's front and rear, I mean just the eye sockets and connection to the chainmail. So how do we do that? Fairly easy. We are going to go over here, and we're going to choose our ornamentation little item, which is really just a box. We'll mess with it in a minute. And then go to Mesh Network, and I'm actually going to make it a mesh, even though it's going to be quite a few of these, and apply. And that will create, you know, like 10 divisions. We don't care. We're just going to make one for now. And the reason is that I'm going to use this mesh to distribute upon it, and then use a set to have those cubes run along the set. So It's fairly easy. We will choose the new network, which should have a better name. I should have named it. I didn't, but that's what we got. I'm going to go to mesh. I'm going to grab the helmet from here. There we go, and look at that. It's sitting right there. But that's not what we want. We need now to grab these edges here. And I'm going to go to Create, Set, Quick Selection Set. And we'll call this or knee helmet. Alright, so I know what that is. I'm going to go back to my helmet here and then just drag that selection set in there and then press flood, so we get that, and then press that little button there, and then we can just take it down and scale. Now that leaves the actual mesh that I need to change, which is going to be down here. So that's going to be its length, so that's going to be its height, so the Y is going to be the parts that are connecting, which makes it look pretty cool, I think. Again, you will get less of this weirdness if there's less data there, but in our case this works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with this. Alright, next we want to create some rivets, so let's do that. Again, choose the rivets. I'm going to open my mesh network thingy again. Not so big. Let's name this rivets and apply, and grab the helmet again, and oops, it helps if I do mesh, grab the helmet, drop it in. Now all I need to do is create some selection sets, so let's start. I need the whole distance, so let's make it from here to about there and there, and then there. Let's just do that and do that. Alright, so I think I have like enough areas that we can, yeah, let's do this like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. We can also, let's just add some rows at the back. Alright, so I got this now. I'm pretty happy with it. Let's create a selection set. So we're gonna go create, set, quick selection set. I won't name this one, it doesn't matter at this stage. Okay, go to rivets, drag and drop them, flood it, press that on, and you see it's wrong. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose the same selection set like that, and this time I'm gonna transfer it by holding down Control and right click to vertices. I'm going to create a new selection set. So let's go selection set, quick selection set, and this time I'm going to name it. So this one's going to be rivets. There you go. So I could blow away the old one. There's our rivets. There we go. So now all I need to do is drag and drop that in there. I think I've got to break the connection first. That was right click on it. Now I can drag and drop that in there, and we get the correct size. Now all I need to do is just move this down. It doesn't do nothing. Alright, so I need to just scale down the actual rivet. So let's do that. And there we go. And that's it. It looks pretty cool. Now, just to show you how much power we got here, I can grab the original mesh that's driving all of this, right? And as you recall, I think I still have a smooth node on it. Somewhere in here I have a smooth node before, because I didn't clear out the history, which I should have. I'm just going to make that level 2, and you can see I can get a much tighter mesh, which now if I play back is going to be way slower. But it's tighter. I'm going to actually just push this back to 1, just so we can get that nice behavior that we got before. Alright, to finalize this off, because we got 3 minutes left, what I'm going to do is, hopefully without this crashing, I'm going to add some lighting and just making this pretty so you could show this off to friends. And this is what you have to do. So fairly easy. I'm going to turn on my lights and turn on my anti-aliasing and turn on my ambient occlusion, which will slow down your playback immensely but still look nice. Alright, now we just need a light, so let's bring in a light. So create directional light in this case, and I'm just going to rotate it a bit like so I get the highlight in front. Shadows, I'm going to turn on shadows and turn on the shadows here. I use depth map shadows, so I can now knock that up to about 5K and 3, and I think that's pretty close, and then make the shadows a bit lighter, and there we go. That looks much better already. It actually looks like it's got depth to it. We can now, let's say, add a point light, and we'll just drag it out there, drag that up so we can get like a filler, like so, just slightly behind and aside, and let's up the intensity even more so that way. It's going to give me like a nice highlight. Dramatic drop off, let's make that 3000. There you go. 5000. Alright, and we can turn off the shadows because we don't need it to shadow. So now when our character moves, has a nice highlight to it. So you get this nice rim light. And that's it. I'm going to end the video here, the tutorial. I hope this was helpful and cool. If you have any questions, please leave in the comments below. If you have any requests, please leave in the comments below. And cheers, and enjoy having fun with NCloth and Mesh.